Hello, and welcome to this screencast, which is going to introduce you to the three P's of the personas of public speaking that we tend to encounter. What I'm going to do is speak from my experience as a public speaking instructor and introduce you to the three major archetypes of new public speaker personalities that I tend to encounter. And I'm going to give you an example of what each one of those looks like or can look like. I'm going to talk to you about the strengths and weaknesses of each one, and then what each archetype can borrow from each other in order to improve their own performances. So, first off, the three P's are professional, personality, and prisoner. And again, these are large archetypes. These are major categories of presenter type. And that means that they are similar to stereotypes and that they are not going to be accurate for every person on this planet. However, they are, like stereotypes, rooted in some form of truth at the beginning. And we will find things in each of these archetypes that we can and do relate to. So, what I want you to do with this particular information is look for which category you most likely fit right now, even if it's kind of a blend of two, and then sit there and think about what you can borrow from the other archetypes in order to improve your own speaking skills. This is relevant to anyone who has to provide a presentation at any point in their student or professional career. So please apply this whether this is in one of my classes or whether you are just accessing this on YouTube. So, to begin, to remind you, the three archetypes are professional, personality, and prisoner, and I'm going to start off with the professional. Now, the professional presenter is going to be someone who is generally very poised, very manuscript, which means it's written out word for word, very focused on making sure that the wording in the content is clear. A professional presenter might look and sound a little bit like this. Get into pose, cross hands neatly, make sure background is good to go, and begin. Hi, my name is Ellen, and what I want to do in my presentation today is introduce you to a little bit of who I am, what I like to do, and where I want to go. My intention with this presentation is to give you a summary of my personality as a whole and make sure that you understand what I'm here to do. Now, that said, what I want to. So it's going to be typically somebody that's going to speak a little bit softer in what they consider their professional tone to be. It will be a little bit slower because the nature of a manuscript or a speech that is written out word for word necessitates that we read, which means we're going to connect with the words a little bit more. And the strength of a professional presenter is that they are going to sound generally a little bit warmer because that professional lower tone. They will speak a little bit slower, which means it is more, I would just say it's easier to hear and understand their information. And they're probably going to be very structured. Professional presenters or people in the professional archetype are typically going to have checked the boxes when it comes to speech structure: attention grabber, preview, thesis, transition, citation. The focus is on being so written prepared that, here are the negatives of a professional archetype, that they lose the engaging personality side of that presentation. When a presenter is so focused on their poise, background, bearing, and reading, they tend to lose their facial expressions. The eyes go dead because they're calculating the next word the whole time or trying to read on a screen or something that's flip in front of them while they're talking. And so they lose their natural presence. They lose their personality and the engaging side of who they could be. Now, with a professional presenter, again, whenever I say that, I mean the archetype, not people who present professionally. With a professional archetype, what they need to do to improve their presentation skills would be to get away from the manuscript. Even if you are excellent at reading and reading aloud, we can still hear the difference between. Let me just find some random notes here. Explore the concept of self care. Chapter 2, for a different class, spends a lot of time focusing on self talk, social distortion, and our awareness of who we are in society. You can hear the difference of read words, reading words versus delivering them naturally. So, if you are a manuscript presenter, which means you write out your presentations word for word, I want you to reduce that. I want you to reduce your text to a point where 95% of your focus is to the camera or to the audience, and the other 5% is to your manuscript outline, as opposed to the reverse. Because as you'll see with a lot of professional manuscript presenters, their attention is going to be broken up between the camera or the audience and their notes, and there's not a fluid connection with their listeners. If you have the tendency to want to be word perfect and therefore you read to us, you will very likely have lower scores on nonverbal delivery, but very high scores on structure and content. And a good public speaker needs high scores in both. Now, the flip side of this would be what I would call my personality presenters. And a personality presenter is someone who is going to be full of verve and fire and energy and emotion, and they would look a little bit like this. Okay, folks, so what I want to do in my introductory video is let you know a little bit about, who I am and what I want to. Okay, yeah, there's people. Anyway, so I want to kind of show you who I am and my quirky personality and the things that I enjoy doing with my time. You can't see because the headphones, so I've got like 14 piercings and my hair's blue. But anyway, so what was I talking about? I got 2 dogs, a couple of cats. I'm married, and I've got some fish too. So you can see with a personality presenter that that energy is definitely there. You would probably smile and laugh listening to one of these. But if you kind of evaluate what they said at the end of the day, you're not really sure if they accomplished much. Like, that I'm bubbly and apparently have piercings and blue hair and a lot of animals. So there really isn't a lot of depth into that typical archetype. And again, archetype, stereotype, a category. If you have a great personality, that doesn't mean you don't have focus. So don't worry. But when it comes to personality-based presenters, they tend to have the beauty of being able to engage an audience. They're warm, they create immediacy, they're fun to watch, you're engaged. But the disadvantages are that they tend to be unfocused and they forget that speech structure has rules. There are requirements, so they might be a lot of fun to watch, but they'll get really high scores on the nonverbal delivery side unless they're too busy. And if they're too busy, then they lose points there too. But they're going to have really, really low scores on the content and structure. Again, you have to have that attention grabber, then your thesis, then your preview. You need to have transitions connecting your points to make it obvious what categories of information you're attempting to communicate. Because just like a professional archetype presenter might miss their audience because they're all content and no delivery, a personality archetype presenter could miss their audience because they're going to be all personality and no content. So we've lost the message. So, what these two archetypes really could do is just borrow from each other. A professional archetype presenter could use the strength, which is structure and wording, but then watch really high energy or immediate presenters and start mimicking. Okay, their posture was here, they weren't over here. Okay, they smiled with their eyes, they remembered to head tilt and use gestures and keep more warmth and personality in their voice. A personality archetype speaker could borrow from the professional and go, "Oh, I can totally see what their main points are. That was a really clever example. That was worded so well." So they could do that and borrow that information from the professional one, and they could balance each other out nicely. So the professional presenter archetype needs to loosen up a little bit and feel free to have emotion and engagement and actual movement. Whereas a personality archetype needs to have that fire, but it's a controlled burn. You're not just going crazy now, okay? You are in control of your energy, you are in control of your pep. When it comes to my third category, which I have entitled The Prisoner, please know that it has been called The Prisoner for two reasons. It's called the prisoner 1 because, for the sake of alliteration, keeping things starting with the same letter is very helpful. Secondly, they're called the prisoner because the prisoner archetype is someone that has been stuck in public speaking and really doesn't want to be here, but they're trapped and they know it. They've got to get through the course in order to graduate, or they have to give a presentation in front of their bosses at work in order to qualify for a promotion, or maybe they're a team lead now and they have to present in a certain way, so they're just stuck. They're a prisoner of public speaking. And a prisoner's presentation tends to feel like this. Well, I'm really not comfortable with public speaking. It's not something I would ever do voluntarily, but I'm here anyway. And um, I have cats, and I don't know if you care to know that. Why would anyone care? Blah, blah, blah. And it's kind of like that. You can tell that every word, every sentence is being drug out of them unwillingly. And even if a prisoner has an open mindset, which means they're really willing to learn about public speaking, from the get go, it's an uncomfortable situation that they would really prefer to avoid if possible. So, if you are in the prisoner mentality, there are two ways this can probably go for you. You could either get wrapped up in that communication anxiety and that public speaking apprehension and let it defeat you because you're going to go, oh my gosh, I'm so bad at this, I'll never be good at it. Or you can take those nerves and channel them into some powerful adrenaline. Speaking from my personal experience, whenever I first had to take public speaking about a million years ago at a community college, I was absolutely terrified. And when I say terrified, I mean terrified, as in whenever I had to stand up and give my very first presentation, which was an introduction of a classmate, I had to wear floor length skirts or dresses or wide leg pants, which were very graciously in style at the time, so that you could not see my knees knocking together because I was terrified. I never heard my own voice because all I could hear was the blood thundering in my ears to the rate of my accelerated heartbeat. So, when I was in my first public speaking class, I would say for probably the first two presentations, I was a prisoner. I was trapped. I was miserable. It was awful. I felt sick the whole week leading up to that public speaking experience. But as I got to the second half of the semester and learned how to prepare so that I could get my mental state where it needed to be, I learned to channel that adrenaline into lighting that fire that makes a presenter strong and engaging. And so, what would happen when that huge adrenaline rush would hit and that fight or flight mode would activate, instead of letting it consume me, what I would do is go, and now here's my performance. And I would turn it into a show. And for those 5 to 10 minutes, I was a performer. I didn't even think of it as public speaking. I thought of it as acting. I am on stage. This is my stage. You are my audience, and I own this room. So I essentially faked confidence until I gained enough experience with public speaking to be truly comfortable with it. I do professional speaking now at conferences, and I still get nervous, but it's a good nervous. It's that excited, I can't wait to get out there nervous, as opposed to that soul crushing terror that tends to come with public speaking. So, what I would recommend you do if you are in a prisoner mindset is I want you to borrow from both of the other archetypes I've already mentioned. You need to give yourself the chance to be prepared. You might have to start off with a manuscript where you write out your presentation word for word to make sure you have checked all the boxes and done whatever an instructor or a presentation situational context is asking of you. Just knowing that you have it all there is going to bring down your anxiety. After you've prepared that manuscript, you can start rehearsing it just the way that you would for any performance and start reducing the amount of text that's in front of you. So you can go from something that's like this amount of text, which I don't know if you can see, you've got that much, to I have 6 words on this piece of paper over here. So I have my original draft of what I want to say, and then I normally boil it down to 6 words or less, and that's all I need to keep me on track as I go through the rest of a 20 or 30-minute video. So, as a prisoner, what you can do again is focus on that structure. Start there. It is sometimes easier to get to than the nonverbal delivery. Once you feel that you have the speech content on lockdown, then you can move to the personality archetype and start watching videos of presenters, actors, or comedians that have some level of nonverbal engagement that you would love to mimic. So find a comedian you enjoy. What I do is I watch TED Talks and I watch the ones that I would grade well, and then I kind of ignore the ones if I watched them once and I didn't like their nonverbals, I don't watch it again. And so I find my favorites and I start looking, okay, what did they do? Okay, they had their chin arched a little bit. They kept a smile in their eyes the whole time. They softened their voices here, but then brought them up here. And notice how when my voice comes up, so does my eye contact, my facial expressions, and my gestures. When I'm giving these videos, right now my feet are anchored on the floor and I am pushing myself forward. I am actually physically pushing forward the entire time because it keeps my muscles engaged. And when your muscles are engaged, your brain is trying to figure out what you're doing so it ups your energy level and you can perform without feeling slack or crumpled or collapsed. So work on that structure first and make sure you get those boxes and then add on that layer of nonverbals and then realize that you are a performer. If you turn yourself into a performer, you go from the prisoner mindset to the performer mindset. And if you can get to that performer status, then you have somewhere you can go with your public speaking skills. So, to recap what we have talked about today, the three major archetypes of student that I typically encounter would be the professional, which is poised but lacking fire. I have the personality, which has all the fire in the world, but some lack of structure. And then I have my prisoner, which is someone that is trapped by fear but can turn it into an amazing performance if they choose to. And the reason I want you to think about these archetypes is you need to identify where you're at. And if you're in between two, is it a good two? Is the feedback you're receiving, especially if you're in one of my classes, did you receive feedback from me that matched your archetype? Did I say great professionalism and personality? Or did I say your structure was perfect, but you were missing verb? Or did I say, wow, you really looked miserable to be here? How can we help with that? See if you can self assess and figure out where you're at, and then figure out what you can take from some of these other archetypes to really assist you. We are all here to improve, and you can definitely make it happen. I hope you enjoy your day.